Greg Corson is a dear friend and partner. We are working together, Greg, I think for more than 10 years now, isn't it?
I think you're right.
Greg is an accomplished entrepreneur. He has been in the staffing business for ages, I guess.
Through a few economic crises, that's for sure.
I think you invented the staffing business from my perspective, but then
I did not do that.
I'm coming from Europe, so I'm not aware of the whole scene in the States. I have a deep respect for his opinions and creative thinking, and also for his commitment to deliver value, his attention to detail. So I'm going to let Greg introduce himself, and then we're going to move to Ken, our next speaker. So Greg, do you want to say a few words about your
I will.
background?
I just wanted to make sure I put the right slide up for this purpose.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you. And thank you for inviting Ken and I to do this today. I am the managing partner at Peak Solutions. We're located just north of Boston. And I guess Loredana's right. The majority of my career has been dedicated to resourcing. And largely it's been in the IT and marketing professional space, helping clients find full-time, hourly, and project basis resources for various number of needs over time. I've been through a lot of cycles. It's true, Loredana, while I didn't invent this business, if I had, that would be another story, but I'd be living in the mountains in Romania someplace. But I have been doing this since the fax machine, if that's helpful at all. But it is, in fact, by way of this activity that I know Loredana and have come to know NNC's capabilities and led to the successful collaboration that we've had for many, many years. Ken Smith, our VP of Digital Marketing, not too far away from me here in the Boston area, and I will be moderating our discussion today about how outsourcing will change now that we are working from home. I have some comments about that in a few minutes, but Ken, go ahead and say hello to everyone.
Hey, Greg. Hi, everyone. Loredana, thanks for including us in today's webinar. And I know Greg through his staffing services, and we've been working together now for over a year. And my role as a marketing automation consultant and VP of digital marketing here at Peak is to work with our clients to help them design, manage, and run their marketing automation programs, including email and digital marketing, advertising, and social media programs. And we actively work together, working with HubSpot, Pardot, and other programs. And I'm glad to be part of this. I've been doing marketing as long as Greg's been doing staffing. So I've seen all kinds of ups and downs in the industry and seen lots of technology changes. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thanks.
Thank you.
One thing that I'd like to add is that both Greg and Ken are actively supporting quite a good number of technology service providers right now, both in terms of their technology, marketing, and sales backbone, but also in terms of consulting, like strategies and even how to adapt to current times. So so their presence here and being the host of today's webinar is something that is very relevant both to our B2B growth in crisis community, but also to our business ecosystem in general. So thanks again for joining, and I will let Greg take over the conversation.
I am not going to take over the conversation. We have only a few short slides, and I'm really hopeful that the conversation is spread amongst us. But quite frankly, even though we talked about and agreed on the subject, on the topic that we have selected, let me go back to it so we can see it. You know, I mean, the reality is our businesses and employees and families have only been affected by COVID-19 for for, 60 days or less. So it's probably actually way too early to truly answer how outsourcing will change. So I wanted to say this. This is my joke, right? So if you've come here looking for a magic special ball to look into for this, you're going to be disappointed. Hopefully, if we had that magic ball, we would share it with you. I guarantee you. And if we had that magic ball, we all would have liquidated our stock portfolios in February. So no, my friends, we're in this mess together, and our goal today is to just have a collaborative exchange, to learn from each other, blend our international experiences, and share our observations. So maybe what we should have said is what might change. So let's kind of maybe frame it in that regard, because I think we're not really sure what will actually change, and I'm not sure that we're going to be working from home forever. So there you go. So over the next hour, let's just try and find some tips and tricks that may help grow our businesses today, and be ready for potentially, I think it's almost absolutely a huge opportunity as economies rebound and we get back to work. So we have a couple of quick discussion points, and I'm going to open these up as we go through them. And so really the first one is, is the COVID-19 crisis affecting service delivery? And I know we've probably all read things, and we've seen stories about how companies have had very quickly shifted to get their employees to safe places and to continue providing the services. But this is my first question to the group, and I would be really pleased if all of you could add your experience in this question. So please come off mute and tell us what you think. Have you had to shift your delivery to be, by the effect of the shift in workforce, or have any of the services you use shifted to deliver for you? So please go right ahead.
So anybody want to share some experiences around how this crisis is affecting their service delivery?
If I may, I will start.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so at least us as a company, Wayfair, didn't really affect the way we are delivering our services to the customer. Mostly because all our customers are abroad. So we are very used to work online with our customers, remote. The only change that we had to do is just to send our people home, making sure that they have everything that they need in terms of logistics to do their work in the same conditions that they have in the office. But strictly referring to the service delivery, no, we weren't affected. So, and what we noticed there is that we are even more productive and effective working from home. So we have another question, why we're not the same at the office, but that's it's another topic.
Well, I think that's one of those things that will change. Anyone else have an observation or an experience that would be helpful?
So maybe someone in North America can share their thoughts and opinions on this.
Well, I know I worked at home quite a bit of the time before the crisis, except for a couple of clients, and the transition's been pretty smooth for the folks I've been working with. So I'm blessed to have a good internet technology, and even though I'm sharing the pipe feed with my family, we seem to be able to be getting through things. So far, so good. We had a windstorm the other day. I got really nervous we were going to lose power. That would make things a mess, but otherwise it's all good.
Very good. Well, one quick add I can slip in. I in preparation for this, called a friend of mine, old college roommate who is responsible for, I don't even know, probably thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people, mostly in India, but in China and other places in the world, that the company that he works for has doing lots of different BPM, BPO type work. And their biggest challenge was the agents use desktops, not laptops. And that it was just a whole nother unexpected disruption to actually either go procure thousands and set up thousands of laptops for people to take home. But how to get desktops moved was just an entirely new puzzle that nobody had planned for. And he also talked about their productivity model, where people are very closely monitored and trained, always kind of being helped along, as we've experienced ourselves from working with firms in this type of environment. And the distributed model just is not in their productivity plan, and has caused a great shift in the way those services are delivered. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes over time. All right, next question. How can outsourcing help companies shift to survive? And so what we're this is sort of the magic ball question. Maybe we don't know yet, but we've seen in I think most countries where, similar to war times, how manufacturers have quickly shifted and responded to making personal protection gear and standing up hospitals overnight. And it'll be interesting to see if they continue to do that, or if stockpiles will be adequate for future situations, or if we just go back to buying from the original sources. So I know that this could take us down the old proverbial rabbit hole in many different subjects. But in terms of software development and business process services, they're really different than manufacturing, but not overly different. If we think about it, for the first time, there's a glut of unemployed engineers, first time in many, many years, that is also combined with a gig economy delivery model. And so not only here in the US, but worldwide. I'm really curious what you guys think about that, and how this might disrupt typical outsourcing. And so please, I'd be really pleased if you had an opinion. Come on, there must be an opinion out there.
I think we talked about this, Greg, when we were preparing for the webinar. And I've even shared the study via LinkedIn earlier today that was saying how outsourcing is impacting the automotive R&D. So it's specifically geared to technology providers to the automotive space, which we know has been hit right now by the crisis. And what was interesting is that although a lot of projects were stalled, and everybody was expecting a decrease in revenues and so on, actually in terms of outsourcing, especially for small, medium business, they are seeing an increase in outsourcing, and they're expecting a 14% increase by the end of this year, just because probably they are going to lay off personnel, but then projects still need to be delivered. So I guess that they will go, with every outsource, with every crisis, you need to get to that level of reducing costs. And I believe that for some companies, outsourcing may be a solution. But it was also the fact that medium-sized companies were like 50-50. They were considering either to insource or to outsource. So I feel that it's still not decided overall how outsourcing is helping companies to survive. What's your thoughts on it?
Hello, this is Andreas, calling from Munich. My opinion on that is that outsourcing will help companies like bringing in or winning additional competences and know-how, what they cannot fulfill with their staff right now, especially in times of reduced productivity. So I think this is something what really can help. So getting new knowledge, more resources, and for sure with people getting to know more and more that remote work is you can work normally with working remotely, it will help to shift to outsourcing. Because before they have, when they see the biggest problems, one is, okay, you're not working together, it's intransparent, this is the basic remote problem. And then the next thing is, you're talking, have different cultures, languages, and this could be also problematic, but getting one step further, I would call it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious, in the United States, the government is incenting companies to retain their employment, and we're spending trillions of dollars on having people continue to be employed in some capacity or another. And I'm wondering if that's what's happening in other countries, and if that may be a disincentive to outsource because maybe those incentives are no longer available to companies if they are to change employment from in-source to outsource. What is your country doing in regard to helping companies with the unemployment challenge?
It's Maureen. I'm in the UK.
Hi, Maureen. Welcome.
Hi there. We've also got a scheme to furlough employees, and the government pays 80%. It doesn't work for all organisations. It works for some. I'm not sure at this stage that arrangement is either an incentive or a disincentive, because some companies are just literally in survival mode. So they're cutting back, if you like, simply to see how long they're going to be out of action before they actually think in terms of expanding again or whatever. And there are obviously plenty of companies that are actually still working with all of their employees just from home.
Sure.
So it's the middle class or professional type organizations that actually are still able to continue. It's more some of the more manual ones that are maybe struggling.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that's a great point. Well, our last point on this bit of the conversation is how does innovation and creativity get stimulated in this time? And as we've seen from previous crises, amazing ideas are caused by, I don't know if it's having our backs up against the wall, or maybe we're just home bored, and I don't know, but where would we be today without reliable, fast internet that supports cloud computing and our software as a service, security systems? Well, nobody's in offices, and even this meeting, right? I mean, these are outcomes of innovations that have come from previous crises that fortunately exist today, or what a mess we'd really be in. So I'd love to hear, some of, not necessarily your ideas, but there's no doubt employment, transportation, medicine, I mean, online everything is ripe for disruption due to this international crisis. So please, I would love to hear how you're thinking about this, maybe the things you're reading in the news around the world about disruption. There's certainly plenty of it here in the United States, but this is an interesting crisis because it's international, and we're sort of all in it together. And I think that's unique. It certainly is within most of our lifetimes.
I think that every time when it comes to a point where old patterns don't work anymore, there needs to be change. So I think when we look back, when we see the different type of companies who were not focusing on digital, or companies who are focusing a bit on digital, and then the third part of companies who are really upfront when it comes to digitalization and how they react now. Yeah, I think everybody who didn't focus on digital will become digital now. Yeah, everything who did it a bit will do it a lot now, and everything who already was upfront will be much better. So I think it's a shift, it's a chance, and I'm pretty interested how the things goes on.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation, and I think that's probably true no matter where we are. I know I've spoken to a number of CIOs in the last few weeks, and some of them had their plan ready to go. Others were new on the job and were not even yet prepared to update the plan they inherited. But you're absolutely right. That's the topic on everyone's mind today is avoiding any disruption for any reason.
Yeah, I think the subject is, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, so this is especially important for software companies. We have a couple of clients who still have on-premise software applications, are in the process of moving them to a SaaS-based model. I think, if anything, they need to increase their schedule because obviously on-premise applications require a VPN or some other source to access remotely. So I think, the SaaS is, in a lot of industries, the move to SaaS is going to accelerate.
Terrific. Any other input before we move along? Or Donna, you always have something.
I think I'm fine for now. I have plenty to add later on.
Put you on the spot, did I? All right. Well, the next couple of slides are really more data point. And I'm not intending to read, but I'll kind of just give you a minute to sort of read through this. This is really, for the most part, data from India and large Indian BPO, BPM type companies. But it's just astonishing to me to think that almost 2 million people, right? And so there's many more people that went to work from home, of course, around the world, but from one industry, delivering services to thousands of companies that provide each of us services. I mean, I did a quick look, and cities like Brussels and Bucharest and Philadelphia, the entire country of Slovenia, are around 2 million residents. Imagine if those places were all in one industry and had to shift and be disrupted. It's a data point that to me is just really interesting. And in speaking to that friend I mentioned earlier, they basically, like you think about how services follow the sun and move around from a time zone perspective, they're following the virus. So as China's virus challenges declined, they shifted their services to their workforces there. And when you think about it in that perspective, it's just really astonishing how frankly, while the plan was probably constructed almost overnight, that the technology is supporting it. So if anyone has any comments here, it would be great to include them. Otherwise, we didn't really have a whole ton to talk about. It was more of a data point. But I guess one question might be, how have you or your companies dealt with work from home in regard to offsite sensitive information and perhaps unpredictable internet as you've relocated to home or relocated your teams? I mean, certainly, the United States does not have good internet coverage in every place. And so I can imagine that exists elsewhere. Any input there? Any comment that you've had to overcome?
before everybody thinks of how this impacted on the company level, I remember this thing that Romanians were very proud of a few years back. I think we had a visit from an American president, and when he went back, he said that Romanians have better internet connection than in the States. So for a while, I remember a lot of IT companies referring to that when they were talking to their customers in the States. But coming back, I did see that even with good internet connection, a lot of the services like Zoom have restricted, and not just Zoom, but also there was another one like Microsoft Teams that restricted the bandwidth just because people were overusing the connection, and that definitely affected, like you can see on a foggy image on the screen, you know, interruptions in the call and so on. So we've seen that, and everybody was trying to upgrade their internet connection, and
Right.
yeah, if anybody else felt that, please share.
I certainly had to upgrade the wireless here in my home to support a college student now studying at home on Zoom all day, and my wife and her use of in her business. So it certainly put it slowed down us within the house. Yeah, so I didn't mean to move the slide ahead, but it's you know, I pulled some data that is quickly published, it seems, but Microsoft adding 12 million Teams users within, you know, a month's time, Slack 7,000 new customers. Cisco, which you never seem to hear about anymore, actually still exists with 3 million meetings per day within the first 11 days of March. And certainly Zoom has got to be rethinking their 45 minutes of free because I think you're right, Loredana, that's bogging down their systems. So I was listening to a number of different broadcasts over the last few weeks, and somebody called this the pause economy, and somebody else called it the pivot economy. So I'm not sure I've made this up, but I'm calling it the pause and pivot economy because I do think it is both. I'm not sure how well you can read Mike Quindazzi, who quite honestly I don't know, but I found this image that he created, and we may be running short on time to go through all 10 of his interesting takeaways. But you know, at a high level, he suggests the impacts of COVID on emerging tech include, and these are all areas of business opportunity that I think we pay attention to. Big data and data analytics as it might be used in future spreads of emerging diseases. He calls out the growth of e-commerce and contactless fintech will further accelerate, he says. So does that mean banks and brick and mortar type infrastructure will change? He uses cybersecurity, right? Build more trust in digital, which would increase the volume of companies modernizing their systems. Digital marketing is number 4. And of course, we've been promoting that for many, many years, but he calls out you know, will traditional sort of events be replaced? You know, what's going to happen to the thousands and thousands of meetups that we're all used to using and attending? Will that business be disrupted entirely? It's an interesting proposition, right? He's got collaboration of learning and how we all will pretend to, or perhaps, sorry, do more learning and take advantage of those opportunities. He's got automation and autonomous systems and how that might be required for social distancing. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking in the background, but this is one of the work from home challenges. He's got scale to address remote workforces. Will this advance to fuel healthcare and predictive and preventive treatments? I think that's an area that's going to get up to number 1 really quickly and really, really going to be disrupted. tackle dangerous jobs with drones, with contactless human interactions. And lastly, he points out cloud computing and the commoditization and democratization and the rapid deployment of solutions. I'm not sure these are in any particular order, but I thought it was well done. And so open that up for discussion if any of those fit your business, or if you can think of anything that he's missed.
Greg, I have a question. You mentioned the pause and pivot economy. Can you give us a bit of a background in what that means?
I don't know what it means. I just made it up. But the pivot economy came from the University of New Hampshire's one of their provosts, who I've come to know, put on their normal monthly event over the web, where I typically attend and shake this fellow's hand. So he was talking about how first pivot backwards and evaluate where you are and think about what needs to change very rapidly. And then his talk went on to how you pivot forward and take what you've learned in order to manage your business successfully in a new world. I'm trying to think where I got the pause economy from, but I think it's I don't know. It's evident, right? We're all in let's sort of take a deep breath, pause, think about what we have to deal with, and move our businesses and our families along. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it's a bit actually counterintuitive, right? Because everybody is worried about not being caught off guard. So everybody is actually moving very fast to catch ground with this crisis. So the fact that you have to pause and pivot, and that kind of puts you in the thinking that maybe we shouldn't rush to necessarily solve something now or to make rush decisions now, but actually pause and rethink the whole strategy, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. All right. Well, personally, I've had the great advantage of attending meetings in Boston, which I always sort of get lazy about going to because they're typically in the late afternoon or early evening. And I've been able to take advantage of those meetings today, in particular, a great innovation center, which you know, I've been able to now participate digitally with and get to know people, and how much more efficient is it to meet these people and learn without having to miss dinner with my family and get dressed and drive an hour and pay $40 to park. So I urge each of us to take advantage of those opportunities that we may otherwise miss. That one's only an hour away. To participate with all of you around the world is even better. Does anybody else have an experience like that they'd like to share? All right, well, let's move to the next slide. This is an interesting situation that I've discovered. I'm absolutely almost flabbergasted by the reality of about half a dozen very large international but US headquartered companies have put together what they're calling People Plus Work Connect employment collaboration. Accenture is the framework, or they're building the framework for this thing. And it just is really interesting to me how quickly this came together. I'd almost have to imagine it was already being discussed and it shifted. Because how could, within 2 months or less of COVID, these companies who have been fighting for people, stealing them from each other, raising salaries, right? Increasing incentives like work from home to be more competitive, to achieve their hiring goals. I mean, we were in full employment, absolute overemployment, and these companies were beating each other up to have the people they needed. And yet today, somehow, miraculously, they're all working together and sharing people so that their peers. They're not competitors necessarily, but they are in a lot of ways in terms of the skills that we're talking about. And so I see this as a disruption, and I open it up to the floor to think about, like, is this a good idea? Essentially a private job board amongst a handful of companies. And will more of these occur? Is this a business opportunity? And so I'm just curious if others have seen something like this occur, and what they think about this idea.
So just to make it clear, what you're saying here is that the big guys are collaborating between themselves to share resources?
They have. They've seemingly, there's not real great detail, but it seems that Accenture has put together a platform for these large companies of hundreds of thousands of people who have each laid off thousands and thousands of people, to share them so that people can get reemployed quickly, but lose them at the same time. So it's just a disruption.
What I've seen here in Germany is not focusing on offering jobs or helping people finding jobs. I saw a lot of, I would say, how can you say, very fast built up platforms from association or any other grouping of people who try to offer help in any from for sure business to completely free things, how to help the restaurants, to survive, and that people are helping each other. This is what I saw. So just to bring an example, not focusing on the job, but
yeah, I think that's a great observation, right? Because this situation has created a lot of empathy that other crises haven't. Like I don't think in an international economic driven crises, that there's been so much empathy and care for your neighbor, care for your workers, care for your friends. You're right. It's different in that regard, and maybe that's how this has occurred.
I was reading an article last week. IKEA, I think in Bucharest, actually rented 12 or 14 people to another supermarket. I don't know exactly which one was it, but basically it was just renting resources, not actually laying them off. So it's another example of good collaboration between big players, let's say.
Right. It'll be really interesting to see if this continues, or, when we get back to normal, which I'm confident we will, if we go back to our bad habits, or if we continue to collaborate.
But this can be also, Greg, a great emerging business idea to build a platform, for example, for sharing resources. Maybe you don't get to profit too much by making it available at cost basis, but for sure you can keep your workforce, or you can sometimes just for the sake of the empathy, as you were saying, to just make sure that they have a job, right? And that they're not left without a job. So I guess this is one of those emerging business opportunities in these times.
Yeah, it may be. I think it's a telltale to keep our eyes on, and business associations is a good example of where this could be really useful, right? Where the same type skills are needed across different geographies. All right, our next slide is really it's again more data oriented, and I want to be careful to save enough time for conversation. But to be clear, this data is solely from one source. It's a WordPress group called Code in WordPress, and they do have an interesting and the links here for you to go see how they grade countries for, and they definitely are sort of slanted towards English language outsourcing. And so we don't have to spend a ton of time here. I certainly don't want to debate these countries, but I was really pleased to see Poland and Romania so high up. That was actually something I wasn't aware of. But I think if it's okay with everyone, unless they have something they'd like to input here, maybe we'll just keep moving.
Okay.
I guess but as I say that, I do have a point I wanted to share, and you know, unemployment generally drives wages downward, and if you couple that with government incentives, I do wonder if lower wages in other countries is in fact one of the you know, primary reasons to move work into an outsourced model. I do think it's probably more accurate. The earlier comment I think is more valuable, and that we're probably looking for skills we don't have, or the ability to move faster into getting things developed and to market. But it'll be interesting to see, but I think costs may be less of the advantage. So I think we all need to be careful about that. Again, we don't have to spend a lot of time here, because I think we're all pretty aware of these advantages. But you know, without just going right through it, if anybody has any comment, I'd sure like to hear it. You know, I think the gig economy piece is interesting, and I do think for the first time in a crisis like this, the gig economy is going to be more prevalent as individuals can be then outsource. We'll see how that goes. All right.
And I know, Greg, that you've been studying on the gig economy for quite a while, so this is something that you can speak a lot about.
Well, I think that's true, right? And as this slide demonstrates, you know, if somebody really has a very good agile project planning and management process, they can piece together individuals instead of whole companies that are outsourcing teams. I don't know that that's so great, but it's possible. And so I do think there will be a shift, and maybe a disruption that we should keep our eyes on. But Ken, you wanted to say a little bit about this one.
Yeah, and again, being somebody who's been working at home quite a bit, I think it's also important for other companies to be aware of some of the best practices to make remote working effective. You know, digital transformation, which really means just keeping up with technology. As Greg learned, having an effective network at home is important, especially if you need help getting it set up.
Nobody said I was technical.
And but it's important. We already talked about, you know, having the work at home workers going. But you know, for the workers too, and especially for folks who are laid off or maybe not quite as busy right now, it's a great time to work on training and update certifications. Those skills are things you can use to not only get more business, get more work. It's a gold standard for a lot of industries. So if you have a little downtime, it's a great time to take advantage of it, and take advantage of a lot of the free opportunities and free conferences. For instance, Writer Access is a company that we're friendly with. We know the CEO and use their services quite a bit. And they have a great annual conference that he has moved online this year, and it's free for all attendees. The other great resources that he's sharing, all of the past speakers in conference breakout sessions, so anybody who signs up can have access to it. So we'll give Byron Writer Access a plug there, but it's definitely a great resource. And there's lots of other technology companies that are offering these resources in groups like this. You know, being aware of cybersecurity issues. If you didn't have a chance to join last week's conference webinar on cybersecurity, it really is an important area to be aware of. You should take a chance to take a look at it. But keeping security at top of mind when you're working at home and accessing, especially if you're accessing new applications and managing passwords, it's really important to always stay diligent and aware. And not just being agile these days. Everybody needs to, right, pause and pivot. So that's basically what I want to talk about. Does anybody have anything to add?
I'd like to,
Please go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was going to mention something much more basic, and that is connectivity between the workers. Something that I have found that works with my clients is literally having a short morning meeting every day, so that people actually know what each other's doing. It's just basic piece of people management, because they're more dispersed and more, they can feel left out of it otherwise.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I had a client I was working on site, and somebody had made a decision to scale back their email to their contractors. That I was going on site in downtown Boston twice a week. Well, I didn't get the message from the managing partner of the office that the office was closed because of COVID, and came all the way into Boston to find out that there was only 2 people in the office. It would have been a nice thing to know ahead of time. So they fixed that, but it is challenging when you have organizations and people are distributed, and having the daily meetings. That's part of the agile best practice too, is having those daily stand-ups and staying in touch with folks. So that's a great tip. Thanks.
Yeah, good one. So last night when I was looking for an image about working remotely, if you guys want a great laugh, go search images for working remotely and look at the ones from 10 years ago and 5 years ago and 2 years ago, because they're really very similar, but from a different perspective. And I frankly didn't even realize till this morning that the one I grabbed is a 2020 image. And I last night I was just, kind of putting the final touches on this. And, but still there are 2 tips missing from this chart, or whatever you want to call it. And so real quickly, can anybody name both or one of the things that's missing here? And there was a hint earlier in this hour. All right, pets. There's nothing about pets. I have been on webinars, people's cats are crawling all over them and their dogs are barking.
And clothing, huh? Clothing.
Yes, right.
Clothing, yeah. Dressing well. You should keep on dressing well in the morning.
Right.
Absolutely.
And one person mentioned, I was astonished that, our managing partner was in a hoodie and didn't look like they had showered that morning, and they had never ever seen that person like that before. And
I think it's important also to keep on your morning, your normal routine. Yeah, it's not only about dressing, take a shower. It's about, I don't know, if you used to, go out for a walk, or if you can still, or having an orange shoes, or whatever you're doing in the morning, keep doing that.
Yeah, I think those are things I hadn't even thought of that are like 11 and 12 and 13. The other one that I identified was I have other people in the house now that aren't usually here. So my daughter comes down at 10 a.m. every morning and sets off the fire alarm, making her breakfast, right? And I had to very specifically tell her today that it would be a really bad day to set off the fire alarm. So sharing your household with other at-home workers and studiers is really an interesting situation. All right, I know we're running out of time. We have one last slide, and it's really about innovation and creativity. And I think we touched on it earlier, but I do think we can all be really, really vigilant about thinking out loud and being aware of our individual skills, about our businesses, about our industries, about the shifts that are occurring. We've hit on many of them today. There's no doubt we will see technology used to better monitor health events. And, I just think it's an unprecedented unemployment dilemma, and the wave of reemployment that's to come, certainly has my wheels turning to think of disruption and ideas. I think the typical applicant tracking system may finally be extinct. I'm hopeful, because it's awful. and it's almost insulting to the worker that has to apply through these type systems. So that's a hint as to what's keeping me up at night. But if we want to turn this over to question and answer, we can kind of start with some of these topics. And I know that people had written in questions, so let's just open up the conversation to anything we all would like to speak about next. Or if Floridana and Monica, you'd like to work on the questions that we have posted. I think maybe there's a slide for those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I would come back a bit to your slide about innovation. I think this is the time to be creative, right? And I believe that it's very important to understand that there are plenty of business opportunities with the current crisis. And we've seen some of our ecosystem pivot, as you mentioned, to really maybe at least survive, if not thrive, under the current circumstances, by also doing the right thing. As you were mentioning before, you know, automotive companies or I don't know, let's say manufacturers switching to providing healthcare accessories or ventilators or things like that. So I believe that with services, we can even be more creative, just because our whole business is about knowledge and knowledge sharing and information and shared experiences and best practices. We don't carry that much assets, and we are, most of us, born digital. So I believe that we can easily adopt creative ideas. I was reading a study that was just put out by Marketo a couple of days ago, and it was saying that creativity is the feature that's going to be most important in marketing over the next 5 years. So this is something I believe very important, and some of the ideas that you have there, maybe you can dive into what you meant by talent sourcing and by shifting teams from one skill to another. Do you want to take a stab at it? I guess you had some background thought into this.
Well, I mean, I don't have too much. I mean, I think in terms of shifting teams, I think more in terms of you know, a videos company at Wayfair, where we're talking a couple of conferences back about, while they have some very specific skills, they market very directly. Those skills have underlying expertise that maybe they could market to you know, keep their teams working. But I think about that individually as well, as I've trained up and gotten a couple of different certifications during this time. You know, talent sourcing is everything that, as we knew it, working in a overemployment scenario is just flipped, right? And so I don't even know what that's going to be, but it's absolutely different. So no, I don't think anything's terribly outstanding here. So thanks for thinking I had some real brilliance, but no, I was just thinking out loud about different things that are high level that we're all experiencing.
If I can add something on this slide.
Please.
Yeah, regarding the second point with shifting teams from one skill to another and also obtaining new certifications, you mentioned that, yeah, we discussed also in other calls and through some emails. Basically, we are taking advantage of this, let's say, pause period. And with the people which for the moment are on bench or not fully allocated on some projects, basically we group them into some teams, separate teams of 2 or 3, and they are doing online training and certifications on different areas, either expanding their already knowledge that they have, obtaining some, I don't know, database administrator certifications and things like that, or even making a shift from Progress Open Edge to .NET or something like that.
Right.
And yeah, basically we are betting on the fact that in the future this for sure will be helpful. And of course, it wasn't really enforced. It was basically they could choose exactly what they want to study. So it was a mutual agreement between us and them.
Yeah, good for you. Has anybody else experienced something similar or?
We've, for example, this whole series of video conferences is actually based on this need to be creative, right, around the crisis, and it's how can we add value? How can we help all the businesses in our ecosystem, you know, with something that we are familiar with and we can easily do, but it would be hard for them to maybe wrap their heads around really quickly. So we've put all of this together as a platform, and we're sharing this, right? And we're doing this sometimes even with some of our own competitors or perceived competitors, like partner agencies or something like this. But you can put it in the creativity bucket, just because everybody's asking us, you know, but why do you do that? Don't you charge for it? You know, why is it free? And
Right.
we're like, we just want to help and add value. You know, if someone like you, Greg, or Ken can come live and share thoughts and ideas with everyone and open it up to discussion, I think that there's something in it for everyone. If I get out of this webinar with even one bright idea and implement it tomorrow, I am better than I was an hour ago, right?
Sure, sure. All right, shall we turn to some of the questions people have asked?
Okay, so thanks for staying after hours. We're going to open the conversation to questions. Stefan, are you online with us right now? I thought I saw you earlier.
Yes, I'm here, Loredana. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Do you want to maybe rephrase a bit or restate your question?
Yeah, it's a little bit strange for me and for others. Let's put it like this. Right now, we are forced to work from our homes. Part of our businesses, it's out because part of us, we are working with company who actually they are in hold on mode, and actually the guys, the technicians need to do something. Okay, working from home, it opens you some new horizons, let's put it like this, and opens your mind in order to think and to how can I tell, to imagine that you can work also for your employer and also for others in the same time, because you have a lot of time and you can experience this kind of work in this period. After everything it will be gone, the people will have the ideas in their head, that the ideas will remain in their head, and they will try to do more than they are doing, than working for just one employer or things like that. That's why I'm asking you, what do you think? Do you think that if somebody is trying to do his best in this period, later on it will accept to work just in one place, or he will try to do better? That was my idea.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think this will be a shift that we'll see. You know, the two quick words for what you're asking is the side hustle, right? Well, more people do the side hustle to bring more income to their families, will even return to the office so that they can continue those efforts. How will that change their productivity? It likely will increase their productivity, because now they need to make themselves more efficient to pull off their side hustle at the same time as their full-time employment. And right, as managers, do we have an issue with that? Is that a human resource challenge? I think your point is well taken. I do think it will increase, and I think it remains to be seen how we all deal with it. It's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, Greg, that this ties exactly into the gig economy and what used to be called the upcoming peer-to-peer economy, right? Where every one of us, at least in the knowledge spaces and in the knowledge fields, becomes this service provider that is paired based on a project with others on a certain competency and skills. And these are still emerging economic models that we're not sure where they're going now, but they're surely accelerated by the current crisis.
There's no doubt. And there's great advantages to using people internationally. As you taught me many years ago, there are lots of trends that take place in Europe and other places that are sometimes ahead of the United States and sometimes par or behind. And that in itself brings out different opportunities of using people from different places that can bring insights into software development or business ideas that may be overlooked if you're only looking within your own economy.
I'd maybe add that in the UK, perversely, while we've increased the number of people with a portfolio career, which is the term we use here, this situation actually may not help for two reasons. One, because employees have been supported in a way that a lot of self-employed or company directors have not been. And secondly, there is a piece of legislation in the UK that is a disincentive, because now they're wanting to tax more without giving the benefits of being an employee. So while there may be more opportunities, I can see more people actually shifting back to being an employee rather than being a portfolio person.
That's a great,
so there's more
great
than one.
observation.
There's more than one way of managing the system. There's a lot of overlapping and interconnecting factors.
Right, right. And for the first time that I can remember, our recent stimulus package passed through our government recently includes incentives for independent contractors. It's always been for the employed who have become disemployed. And for the first time ever that I can recall, the independent contractor, this gig economy individual, has the opportunity to apply for benefits.
Technically, our people do as well. Technically, not necessarily practically.
Huh. And why do you say that? How is it different?
That's a level of detail.
Okay. Andina had a question: what areas of business will be outsourced in the future? I think the quick answer is there's probably no limit. The question might be the inverse. In fact, what might come back and no longer be outsourced because it doesn't have to be. Sorry, I didn't mean to change the slide. Did anyone have a comment on that, or Andina, do you have anything specific you were thinking about? All right. Christian, are you with us today?
I'm not sure he is, but I think we can still address the question. He may be watching us live on Facebook. So this is a question actually that maybe most startups are worried about right now. Will the valuation of my company reduce if all my teams are outsourced remote workers, or can I retain their added value through employment contracts? So I know, Greg, you had an opinion on this.
Well, I was hopeful Christian could add the thought process of the question. So because I can answer it a couple of different ways, and I'm frankly not a valuation expert or an investment advisor or expert. So I want to be cautious, because probably different investors might look at this differently. That said, yeah, I think I've heard stories where it's mostly around IP and the valuation of that IP, if it is under your control versus maybe under indirect control. And so that was probably more the trigger that could answer that question best. As far as employment contracts, I think that really depends on probably the country and the state, because there are all kinds of different rules around those that might change the answer to that question. But it's a great question and one that's really important to our businesses. And it potentially is another one that could really be disrupted by COVID. The idea of non-competes being no longer valid has been spreading across the United States. And with the gig economy, with the subjects we were recently talking about, non-competes could become a thing of the past very quickly because of this, and cause people to be able to, without any challenge, either have multiple jobs at once or bounce from one company to another without any real ability to hold their subject matter expertise. So that could be an outcome. I hope that answers your question, Christian.
If I can add something to the list there, we've seen that actually this crisis did have an impact on mergers and acquisitions, and actually we've seen quite a lot of intensified activity around M&A, just because there may be interesting deals, or there may be, you know, companies in need of help that may go with a lower valuation than usual, and investors providing more value add right now just because of the crisis. So that's, I guess, a general good thing. And two more ideas which I'd like to add. I believe that the revenue per capita is important for a service business. So in there, having outsourced resources that are not necessarily key personnel may be adding to your valuation. However, if you have a product business, and I've seen that you have a positive plus one is actually community mobile platform and a niche community mobile platform, I believe employees may be key to your success formula. Therefore, I would retain employees even with these times as much as possible, just because they retain key knowledge. Again, as Greg mentioned, we're not experts in M&A and in valuations, but those are my 2 cents on it. So hope this helps.
Do we have any experts in that area on the call that would like to contribute? All right, no problem. I just thought I'd give you the opportunity. The next question from Dana: what channels for cold calls to use? What are the best ways to reach out to CTOs, CEOs during the quarantine? How to build professional networks instead of personal meetings? I mean, this is the topic of the hour. And so I know personally, I've found, I think it has to do with the empathy of the situation. Maybe it's because people are at home, their guard's down. Maybe they're not as distracted by, you know, being in an office. But I've had people pick up the phone more often than previously. And I think it's a great time to reach out to your networks, particularly companies or people that you may not have had the opportunity to get to before. It's an awesome time to be writing and doing video blogs and getting yourself known within your area of expertise. Loredana, or anyone else that would like to contribute, or is Dana still with us?
I can pinpoint you to 2 webinars ago. The webinars are recorded and they are on our YouTube channel. 2 webinars ago, one and Monica in the NNC team shared what type of content works to still, you know, make some market awareness, and what type of channels still work. So I would go over that again just to address it in a better overall framework and understanding. I believe that, you know, there's no difference right now between professional network and personal meetings with clients. My own feeling is that we got a mix. So I'm gonna share an experience here. I had to call on LinkedIn support. I actually chatted with LinkedIn support, and I always had an impression that LinkedIn support is unresponsive and it's taking a lot of time and they have this really strict regulations and so on. It was the first time in history when I got a really personal treatment. What that means is first of all, they solved it instantly, my issue. Right about the end of the conversation, he asked me, how are you holding on? Until that moment, I was thinking I'm talking to a robot, right? So I'm like, you know, we're holding on pretty well, but LinkedIn is a big part of the way we build our professional network. And then a really personal conversation. It's like, where are you from and how are things in there and how, and at once I became a LinkedIn support fan, like that moment, right? And it was a very personal conversation. And normally this person wasn't, forced into it. I guess they don't have politics around it, but I was surprised. So I believe that the way you build a professional network these days is being empathetic, being there for people when they need it, listening to them, asking them for what they need. It's a very thin line between what's professional and what's personal, but maybe some other people in the room can share some of their thoughts on it.
All right, I think you did a great job of answering that. Let's see what we have next. We offer a great platform for communications, and I'd like to learn more about how you all see the future as it relates to outsourcing. Hopefully we've answered that. Marshall, are you on that you would like to speak more about? Loredana, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you did a great job answering this, Greg, during the webinar. So I guess that all the ideas are answering this question.
All right. Well, Marshall, please reach out to me directly if you'd like to continue the conversation. Well, those are the questions that were written in. Loredana, Monica, do you guys have anything else that's coming in through your channels that you're watching?
I see there's nothing on the chat pane. Monica, do we have anything else?
No, I think we've covered everything for now.
Terrific. Any last thoughts, questions, ideas?
Yeah, so I'd like to thank everyone for your time. I know it's, for some of you, Easter is right around the corner, and I really appreciate you staying a bit long. And for some of you, it's been a really intense week with Easter just passed. So thanks all for taking time out of your day-to-day, busy day-to-day, and joining us. I really appreciate the time you dedicated, Greg and Ken, to preparing for today's webinar. It was very interesting and it was very interactive, so thank you. And please remember that I believe everyone that's participating to the community has something important to share for the others. We are helping you organize these webinars for free, just so that you can add value to the business community. Please reach out to us and propose topics and whatever you believe is best. We decided to have a break for next week, just because we've noticed quite a few companies taking the week off next week, at least in our area of the world. So we will resume our series of webinars in 2 weeks. We're going to announce the schedule via LinkedIn and Facebook and all the media channels, and the B2B growth in crisis support groups, which we have both on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Andreas, do you want to share a few thoughts about the upcoming webinar? Andreas is going to be our host for the upcoming webinar in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would like, I'm still working on the phone, to be honest, but things getting more tangible, and our focus in on then regarding the current situation, companies need a new perspective, how to build future-proof businesses. And based on that, we want to talk about transformation and innovation. So that was a really good crack with what I see today. There were some, I would say, connections here. And I want to share some ideas about what is important to transform and innovate, that you need to build knowledge and expertise for sure. And that's what means that you need to bring that in from external side. So there's an impact of remote teams helping with proceeding in the transformation and the innovation. And I want to share some ideas about a strategic approach and how you can use ideation on that to find new models, new business models, service models, revenue models, and also how you can use an MVP for testing things very rapid. So this is somehow an outlook what we want to focus on.
It sounds like we're going to need a week.
I try to make it very, very fast.
These are really great. And I really look forward to enjoying learning from you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Yeah, I will get back to you, Craig. I want to share some ideas about outsourcing. So I will contact you.
Please do. Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah, and to anyone else, I look forward to knowing you. And Loredana?
Please reach out to any one of us, and especially to Greg and Ken if you have questions on today's session. And we look forward to seeing you in our online communities in the next week's webinar. Please ask questions. Please don't feel shy about asking for support. We're here for you whenever you need help. Thank you so much. It's been a great session. Thank you, Greg.
Perfect.
Thank you,
Very
Ken.
well, everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, guys. Bye.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.